Welcome to She Rebel Radio, a community-driven podcast dedicated to supporting women to unlearn conventional rules and create businesses of significance. Each season, She Rebel Radio brings you insights and advice from noteworthy women entrepreneurs who strive to create more meaning, impact, and purpose. This episode is sponsored by Coast to Capital. Now here is your host, Lulu Minns.
Welcome to Season 2 of She Rebel Radio, where we're focusing on creating, leveraging and leading businesses of significance. To celebrate International Women's Day, we have 4 special episodes for you, all sponsored by Coast to Capital, who provide leadership, investment and business support to increase productivity and generate sustainable and inclusive growth. This is episode 69, Owning Your Space with Jo Blood. Jo is the founder and managing director of Posture People, an independent ergonomic furniture consultancy which she runs alongside her husband and a team of expert workplace assessors. Since the good old days of the 1990s, Posture People have helped countless companies and individuals to provide happier, healthier and more productive working environments. Jo is truly an expert in her field and has appeared on the BBC and has been quoted by several publications, including The Guardian and Evening Standard. Jo, it's amazing to have you here. How are you doing today?
Good, thank you. And thank you for asking me. I feel like it's a real honour to be here.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm really looking forward to diving into the questions. And when I was researching for our interview, I found the new home working wireless kit on your website. And with so many people working from home right now, can you tell us what that is and why we might need it?
Yeah, the home working wireless kit is one of the things that we realised when people suddenly made this transition to having to work from home very quickly. There was a lot of emphasis at the beginning put on actually companies being able to function, setting up new systems, that sort of thing. And one of the things they did was send everybody home with a laptop. But if you think about it, when you're in the office, you've got a monitor, you've got a separate keyboard and you've got a separate mouse. And the trouble is, when you work on a laptop flat on the desk, it actually puts your back and your neck into a really bad position. So what you want to do is almost treat your laptop like the monitor. So you want to have the screen up a bit higher. So you've got a laptop stand as part of that kit. And then you need a separate keyboard and separate mouse because you're not able to use the keyboard and mouse any longer on the laptop. So actually it's really important for your neck and for your back to actually have that screen a bit higher up. And the only way you can achieve that is via sort of a kit system like this.
Yeah, amazing. Lots of the She Rebel Radio listeners have kind of transitioned out of companies, left companies and started up things by themselves. And I think the same problem occurs in terms of you get a laptop, start working on it, and then the problems come from there.
Well, you see all these beautiful images, don't you, of people working in like a coffee shop or something, balancing the laptop and sort of looking sort of very lovely and sort of having a nice sip of tea and coffee. And what they don't show you is sort of 2 hours later when that person tries to stand up and actually realise that their back's locked or something. So it's kind of the balance of making sure that people have still got good advice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know before we hit record, we were talking about my past life as a criminal defence lawyer, and we'd be like hunched over benches, scribbling notes, and I had real bad back problems when I left. So I know that much. Definitely.
Yeah. It's funny, actually, because I always think that lawyers would have great setup. Actually, lawyers are some of the people that we go in and actually see the most in terms of like really odd conditions to be working as well.
Yes, it doesn't always follow through, for sure. Including with policies and things like that. I think sometimes they can be missed. But what is ergonomics and how did you become an expert in the field? How does one become an ergonomic geek?
Oh, it's quite a windy story in my case. I did not set out to do this type of job at all. I was actually working for the car industry working very much in a kind of account manager role. But my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, was working in the ergonomics industry for a company up in London. And like many other couples, we got to the stage where we were like, right, we want to leave London. We want to move somewhere nicer. And so we moved down to Brighton, and he actually set up a offshoot of the London company that he was working for at the time. He set up a branch of it down in Brighton. And that sort of progressed. And then we had the opportunity to buy out his business partners, which we did. And it coincided with the birth of our first child as well.
Right.
And why in my head I thought that buying a business and having our first child would be a good idea. But at the time I was like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. We'll do that. And I'd sort of always been involved a little bit in the background, helping him out. But I started to become more and more involved in the business, initially very much from a kind of administrative side. So setting up systems for him, sort of doing a bit of the accounts, that type of thing. And I think you learn by osmosis sometimes, don't you?
Yeah.
I've always been really interested in people. A lot of the degree I did was personnel based as well.
Yeah.
And so actually getting that kind of interaction with people and being able to help them as well. Although we're selling a product, it's very much a consultative sales. So we find out what problems people are having and then actually match up the products that will actually help reduce those problems. And so I sort of got involved more and more and more. And sort of next thing I knew, I was actually working full time in the business, sort of having completely come away from sort of marketing and also the personnel that I had been doing. So
yeah, and as you say there, it really what you do and the consulting aspect, etc., it really starts with people, and that's something that you've always had experience and expertise within.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
You work, and within that, I think as well, what's really important, as you said there, in terms of when things kind of unfold and we find ourselves in particular places, it's often when we look back at our history of the things that we have done that it starts to make sense, kind of the work that we find ourselves doing. Does that resonate in terms of, as you said, when I actually thought about the degree that I did and my experience?
Yes, because funny enough, I did a business degree, and so I'd never thought about actually running my own company, and it wasn't something I had ever envisaged in my life plan at all, was the fact that I didn't feel I was particularly entrepreneurial. I didn't feel that I had this burning desire to create my own company. But the more and more I started to do it, and actually the more expertise that I kind of gathered in the world of ergonomics. So once I started talking to customers, we obviously started doing sort of a lot more training. So then you start taking more and more kind of courses in it. So I became a qualified workstation assessor. Then you go through a lot of training with various different manufacturers as well. And there's a lot of training on the job. And so you end up sort of developing and turning into this person that you hadn't actually ever envisaged for yourself. So, or at least I hadn't envisaged.
Yeah, interesting that you studied business but didn't necessarily see yourself having a business. And I think often as well, experience and actually learning on the job and as we go can be massively undermined in some ways in terms of education, the more traditional education that we can receive.
Yeah, I'd agree with you actually, because in our industry, there's a lot of workstation assessors that have come from the kind of physio background or the osteo background, or they've gone on to sort of actually become very qualified in ergonomics. And actually their skill set is different from our skill set. So they essentially can sort of look and see how the body's functioning and sort of say, well, okay, that might need to do this and that might need to do that. But then they haven't actually got the skills to be able to say what can really help that person. So they can kind of say what's wrong, but they've got no idea about the products on the marketplace. Some of them have then gathered that experience separately, but we come at it from a different angle by having a sort of very broad range of product knowledge and then being able to apply it to the situation.
Yes, you're really looking at the solution for people.
Yes.
Yeah. Perfect. So you work creating better workspaces and environments for others. And what hurdles did you need to overcome to kind of own your space in being an expert in your field and providing those solutions that you've talked about?
It's always the classic one of, it's awful. It's a kind of sweeping generalisation, but you're a female playing in a very male-dominated industry. The furniture industry is exceptionally male-dominated. I think I've been quite lucky in my career. I've always worked in quite male-dominated industries. So I worked in the car industry, and then I worked in the telecoms industry, and now I work in the furniture industry. And I've always been the type of person to push a little bit harder, if you like, and not accept if somebody has kind of turned around and made a bit of a kind of disparaging statement. Mm-hmm. And so I think you have to prove that you're very much an equal of the other people in the room. And I think that goes for everybody. I don't think it is necessarily a male-female thing, but I think sometimes you have to just make sure that your voice is one of the ones being heard. And so I have been in situations, and because my business is owned 50% by myself and 50% by my husband, there have been occasions when people have deferred to Dave as opposed to myself. And I'm actually the person that runs the business on a day-to-day basis. Dave looks after the sales. And so there's been numerous occasions where I have had to remind people that actually, if you want to sell your products in our business, it's myself that you need to talk to. And you can talk to Dave all you like, but I'm the person that will make sure your parts get on your system. All of our salespeople are trained up with your products. So therefore, if you keep talking to Dave and don't keep talking to me, we're not going to sell your products. Yeah. And there's been a lot of just making sure that people know our roles, basically, within the industry.
Yeah, and it's so true. My parents actually used to run a record shop together, and my mum would have the exact same thing in terms of, you know, if suppliers, etc., or people would say, oh, you know, and funnily enough, my dad's called Dave, you know, would call it Dave's shop, and, you know, and so sometimes disregard kind of her and her role within the business, which again was the day-to-day running of the business.
Oh, it can be so maddening sometimes as well. I've had one supplier walk in and said, I knew Jo years ago. She made a very fine cup of tea. Funnily enough, he never came back to our premises again. So
absolutely. I used to have it again as a young trainee in the legal profession, you know, but I was the person that had the relationship with the clients when barristers, you know, would come in to provide the expertise for Crown Court, etc. But yeah, would often get disregarded for, just make us a cup of tea, and, you know, what you've got to say is not of any interest, but you're the relationship with the client. So yeah, it happens in so many fields. Yeah. So you seem like you are, you know, empowered within your voice. You will say, you know, when those things you know, don't work for you. I've always been that way as well. What have you felt other hurdles of, you know, like imposter syndrome coming in, and am I really the expert?
Yes. Very, very much so. It's one of those real classic times where all of a sudden you find you're running a business and you look back on it and kind of go, how did I get here? Am I qualified to do this? And people going to listen to me? We've got 5 members of staff, and all of a sudden you find yourself managing other people, and then you suddenly kind of go, actually, I'm not sure I'm doing this right, or could I be doing this better? I think that's one of the things that actually drives me, because I constantly look as to whether or not I can do things better. And I try and make sure very much that we're continually reviewing how we do things to actually push things better. But I think a lot of that is that I have a very strong inner critical voice as well. And so I never think I'm good enough, and I never think that I'm doing enough. I'm also really sorry because there seems to be lots and lots of lorries going past us. We work in the middle of a port, so our warehouses are in a port, and normally it's quite quiet Friday, and there seems to be like hundreds going past. So I do apologise
I did wonder
for that.
what that noise was actually. I was like, oh, it sounds like a train.
No, sorry.
No, that's okay. So you were saying you've got a strong kind of inner critic voice that you're aware of.
Yes, yeah, very much so.
That's pushing you to, do better. Can I do better? How do you, do you tame that critic? Do you create a dialogue with that more critical side of yourself?
I think you have days when you win and days when you don't win, don't you? Yeah. And so there are times when you suddenly go, yeah, I've got this. And bizarrely, I have found the whole COVID situation really, really difficult in terms of pre-March last year. Our business we just hit the right groove, and you hit that magic alchemy where everything seems to be working, and we'd seen to get everything really, really flowing well. The team were really well bedded in. We'd got over a few little niggly things, and we were really rocking. And then obviously March and April came along, and everything that you knew and had worked for was suddenly very, very different. So we very much predominantly work within the office environment. And all of a sudden, that traditional office environment didn't exist anymore. So we had to pivot the business very quickly to selling far more to individuals. And we've always dealt with individuals on a one-off basis, but it was a very small part of our business, whereas it's suddenly reversed and become the majority of the business.
Yeah.
And so in my head, I was like, I'm not good enough because I haven't been able to foresee this. I haven't been able to change the business quickly enough. And it's only with hindsight and stepping back that you can actually go, no, actually, we have survived this terrible period of time, and actually the business has coped with pivoting, and that's partly because of all the work that we put in before this happened, that we were able to be so flexible and actually change effectively our business model overnight. So yeah, I've sort of silenced the inner critic, which if you'd have asked me if we'd have done this podcast back April, May time, I'd have gone, oh my God, I'm terrible. I don't know what I'm doing. Whereas now you sort of can step back a little bit and kind of go, no, actually, I've done a bloody good job, and I have managed to keep everything going. And yeah, it's okay. So
yeah. And it's that, it sounds like, as you said, there we can very much be in our heads and internalize what's going on. Never before really have we seen such a big impact to hit everybody kind of worldwide, but how we are coping with it and how we're pivoting, it can become a very kind of personal journey, and we can get stuck in our heads with that in fact everybody is going, what do we do here?
Yeah. So it's like a kind of whole collective, wasn't it? We were all sat down kind of going, we've got no idea what we're doing. And I suppose that's what made it interesting. And that was partly, again, you could step back from it and kind of go, this is happening to everybody. And I think sometimes once you did realise that, it was much easier to start putting things into place. I, unfortunately, by nature, I'm a fixer. I like to fix things. I very much like to control things as well. So we were suddenly faced with a situation that I couldn't fix and I couldn't control. So it actually becomes, it was like my personal kind of nightmare, really, in some ways. So.
Yeah. And if you say, as you say, fixing, if you need to fix and control and you suddenly can't do that, then the inner critic comes out even more. Like, why can't you control all those variables? And why don't you know more? And as you said, why didn't you see this happening?
Yeah. Oh God, and then throw homeschooling into the mix as well. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you, as you've, within you've always supported, independent individuals, etc., working at home and making that, far more comfortable and living happier, healthier lives within that. But that was a small section of your business, and bigger companies, workplaces being the larger section. How did you begin to kind of shift that around?
Well, one of the things that we realised was that e-commerce was going to obviously play a very big role. And we had a shop facility on our website, but we weren't doing a huge amount. We were selling mainly accessories through that. None of our chairs were available to purchase online because we'd always been a little bit hesitant, and we were very much like, oh, no, we want to be able to talk to people. And we want to be able to, I think we were a bit worried about how many of these chairs might come back as well. And then we suddenly realised that actually that was the avenue that everybody was using. They were buying furniture online, and we almost had a responsibility to provide that equipment as well. So we could actually provide really good product that could be well set up, and we could actually make sure that people were getting products that would help, as opposed to buying a random chair off Amazon that could possibly exacerbate problems as well. So we put a lot more of their products online. We've offered up kind of virtual, we can now do virtual workstation assessments as well, so that if people don't feel comfortable with an assessor going into their home, we've now can do very good assessments over the phone or over the internet, to be able to actually assess how people are sitting and what needs to change. So it's been interesting because it's actually opened up new avenues for us. We've kind of gone, we were a little bit sort of neglectful, if you like, over the e-commerce side of things. And actually, we've realised that, no, actually, we have got a really good offering within that space as well.
I think sometimes we can get focused on that bigger stuff that we can forget the smaller things. The same for me, was really, focusing on my one-to-one coaching, a particular program that I used to run, which in fact I ended up not running last year, and really focusing on the online self-study courses that I've always provided and sold, but never really focused on because it's small in inverted commas. But again, I love the reframe for you in terms of actually we've got a responsibility to show up here as the experts that we are and actually provide the furniture that people actually need, instead of what they might buy on Amazon and not have the knowledge that they need to move forward.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people are approaching us for at the moment, is actually saying, we've got these problems, what's going to help? And actually, we're having a really high success rate of actually being able to help people and find the right equipment for them. And then I sort of feel that's then helping the companies that they work for, because they're more productive. And so therefore those companies are going on to flourish more as well. So it feels like we're supporting at the ground to make sure that everybody does the very best work they can.
Yeah. Why is that important to you? What's the feeling you get when you make that real difference to someone's working life?
I think it's just this immense satisfaction. There's this satisfaction that, one, you've helped reduce the pain and discomfort that someone is feeling. But then also, I think because I own my own business as well, I feel this immense pride that actually that person's going to be more successful in their role. So they'll be helping that company grow and flourish and produce something fantastic as well. There's a fantastic digital marketing agency in Brighton, and they've got a very simple kind of mission statement. And it's just that their mission statement is to make life better. Yeah. And we've taken that and adopted some of that and kind of gone, well, actually, how do we make life better for the people, the individuals that are working? But then also, how do we make life better for the companies that they're working for? And you feel like one of the support functions. It's like, I think a lot of companies think of it and sort of go, right, well, you've got your IT and you've got your telecoms. And I very much think that actually the furniture and the equipment that bosses provide to the people working for them can have a fundamental effect on how good that person is at their job as well. Yeah. I sort of always do the comparison. You wouldn't give somebody that works for you a computer from the 90s. So it's like, well, why do you think it's acceptable for somebody to sit on a 15, 20-year-old chair? Whereas actually things have evolved, things are better. I get very passionate about the fact that furniture shouldn't be holding people back.
No, and I think the pandemic and COVID in this past year, it's been very tough across the board, but also it's really made a lot of us focus on what actually makes life better and those smaller things that make such a massive difference. Because if you're in pain because you're sitting on the wrong chair, that's going to have such a massive impact on how you show up to others, to business, to, whoever it is that's around you.
Yeah, huge impact.
So how has Coaster Capital and the Natwest Accelerator Hub supported you and the business?
Oh, do you know what? I thank every day that actually I found them, because sometimes you just stumble into things, don't you?
Yeah.
So Coaster Capital and the Accelerator Programme, the Natwest Accelerator Hub, had supported me. That we got approached, I think about a year, maybe slightly longer ago, to become part of a peer-to-peer network accelerator group. Mm-hmm. So they were looking for companies that were on a high growth I can't think of the words now, a high growth sort of pathway, if you like. And the idea behind this peer-to-peer mentoring is that they would get small groups of between 6 to 8 companies together and actually then put the individuals together with a moderator so that you'd get somebody to keep the conversation flowing. And we'd get the opportunity to talk about our business problems and actually have people, sort of your peers essentially, be able to help you actually say, well, have you tried this? Have you tried that? And we've done this within our company. And the idea was that we were all companies of very similar size with sort of same sort of growth ambitions. Mm-hmm. And it was tremendously useful to sit down and actually be able to discuss issues with people. So that was the kind of first experience I had with Coaster Capital and Natwest Growth Accelerator. But then when the pandemic hit, they actually approached with funding as well. And so right in the middle of this, you had the option to apply for funding to help it. And the funding that we applied for was to help with marketing. So I had a sum of money that allowed us to go on and develop our website further and to help me understand sort of advertising like Google Ads and suddenly doing all of those things that we'd never bothered before. Actually, somebody could help me, talk me through and coach me through that side of things as well. So it was tremendously useful. And again, Coaster Capital have gone on to provide another online peer-to-peer growth as well, which has been fantastic because actually there's a wider range of businesses and you've got everybody there. There's a hairdressing salon chain of shops. You've also got a travel agent. You've got a couple of marketing agencies.
Yeah.
And it's been so useful to have their kind of knowledge, really.
Yeah, and people, having that similar experience to you. Did you used to have the peer-to-peer groups face-to-face before COVID and now it's online?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, but it gives you wider access, as you said. There could be those benefits. Amazing. And so what is next for you and Posture People? Are you going to continue virtual workplace assessments when things open up? What are the plans?
I think we will continue it because it allows us to offer them more cost effectively than in-person ones. I think there will always be a place for in-person. And so I very much see it as a complementary service alongside the face-to-face. And so normally we can go all over the country doing the face-to-face, but we've been able to do that virtually as well. So some people might prefer the virtual option as opposed to they might prefer the virtual option rather than the face-to-face one. But I very much see us doing that, plus as well adding to e-commerce side of the business as well.
Yeah, which has really given you an opportunity to grow and expand that with this past year.
Yeah, very much so.
Amazing, Jo. Thank you so much for being with us today. Is there anything you want to share before we wrap up?
No, I just think that if anybody out there has got an idea of what they want to do and go for it, then you should just go for it. I think this whole year has just shown us that actually you just need to get out there and actually make sure that you're doing what you want. And also, if you don't feel very comfortable at work, then please come and talk to us because we can make you more comfortable.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing that, we all, no matter where you are in business, ask those questions of how did I get here? Am I qualified? Am I good enough? It's a narrative that we all have, but it doesn't need to stop us from, stepping into our expertise and potential.
No, definitely not. Go for it.
Thanks so much, Jo.
Thank you. Thanks very much for having me on.
Before you go, I wanted to say Happy International Women's Day to all of our She Rebel Radio listeners and incredible guests that we've had on the show, as well as a massive thank you to our sponsors, Coaster Capital. Coaster Capital are a local enterprise partnership providing strategic leadership, connecting businesses with support and acting as a catalyst for transformational change. Now make sure you listen to all 4 episodes where we've talked about fermenting yourself as you ferment your business, finding a kinder way and giving back to others, business growth and mindset, and how you can own your space as an expert in your field. Coaster Capital work in partnership with the Natwest Accelerator Hub, who are committed to powering UK businesses to start, scale and succeed. And they have 12 accelerator hubs all across the UK. They also have the Business Builder programme, which is a completely free online tool which can be accessed at natwestbusinessbuilder.com.
Thanks for listening to She Rebel Radio, the podcast for women unlearning conventional rules and creating their businesses of significance. She Rebel Radio is executive produced by award-winning coach and advocate Lulu Mins. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to hit subscribe. And if you're feeling social, find Lulu Mins and the She Rebel Radio community using the links below.